very many. About 6 years ago, there was a re-examination of the historical records by the biblical scholar, Dr. Ernest Martin. And he's given us a new look at the Christmas star. And the star was seen by the wise men. Actually, Matthew is the only record we have which gives us the only account we have of that star. And it reads as follows.
Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, Go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed. And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy.
We've all heard this account. This is the only account, both historically and biblically, of the star. And this account, therefore, must let all our clues for finding the Christmas star. Let us examine those clues. First, the star was seen in the days of Herod the king, telling us approximately when. Now, Herod actually could not see it. Herod had to ask where the star was. That's our second clue, actually. Brings us to the third one. Only the Magi saw it. The Magi first saw it, they saw it for a few months, first in the east, then overhead, and finally in the west, as the star went before them. And finally, in that narration you heard, there was actually no description of the star. So it could have been almost anything. Well, but obviously the key to finding out what the star was lies in knowing who the Magi were. Why were they the only ones to see the star? Well, because the Magi were the sky for special events. The story of these Magi is one that takes us back in time more than 2,500 years. The Magi came from ancient Babylon, a center of learning and great beauty in the centuries before Jesus. Many who lived in Babylon professed to have a sacred knowledge, and among them were the Magi. The Magi were probably priests of the ancient Zoroastrian religion, a religion founded many centuries earlier by Zoroaster, also called Zarathustra. Zoroastrianism was an interesting mixture of monotheism and dualism. The chief deity of Ahura Mazda was the one true God encouraging righteousness and truthfulness. On the other side was the god Angra Mainyu, representing evil and falsehood. In the real world, there was a constant struggle between these two. It was up to the followers which one they would follow. Supposedly, in the long run, the good would win. This belief system began about 600 BC amid the semi-nomadic tribes of northeast Iran, Afghanistan, and the southern Soviet Union. It quickly spread to dominate the entire Persian Empire. It was an important religion, shared many roots with Judaism, and later affected Judaism as well. It influenced the later rise of Islam and Christianity, and today, it still has about 100,000 followers in and around Bombay. It was the function of the Zoroastrian priests to advise the king on divine matters. They interpreted dreams, omens in the sky. They watched astronomical motions to interpret meaning. In the 20th century, we call this astrology, and it's quackery. But at the time, in the early days of Babylon, Magi were very powerful, sometimes even more powerful than the king. By the time of the birth of Jesus, their political power had declined greatly, and they were simply respected as wise men, living in a world where few people could read or write. In addition to these omens, dreams, and astrological signs, they also studied the ancient books and records, the prophecies. They would have known of the prophecy of Daniel, who was one of the Magi at the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel prophesied that Jerusalem would one day be rebuilt and become the capital of the world. This was supposed to happen sometime around the 1st century BC or AD. It's a very well-known prophecy. So the Magi were looking for special events in the sky. And if you look hard enough, you can find something. Thus, when the Magi saw their sign, this star, whatever it was, that was their cue to leave Babylon, to go to Jerusalem and search for the newborn king. Now, unfortunately, we have no specific information on these specific Magi. We know that they were Zoroastrian priests, but we don't know their names. And we don't even know how many of them there were. We have equally little information about the star they supposedly saw. So we play detective to figure out what we can. This problem is an old one which has plagued many historians, theologians, and artists who have tried to reconstruct the ancient scene. Indeed, over the last 2 centuries, artists from all over the world have portrayed both the Magi and the star in a bewildering variety of ways. Could have been almost anything. The belief that there were 3 Magi comes from the knowledge that there were 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We don't really know. Now, if the star was really a dream or an omen, we'd stop here. And this is a real possibility. But if the star really is a star, then we can try to figure out what it was. Anyway, the Magi were astrologers who watched the skies. And the object, whatever it was called a star, not a dream or an omen. And so let's look back to the days of Herod. The logical thing to do is to set our planetarium machine back to the sky as it looked at the time of the birth of Jesus. We don't know when that was. No one knows. Written records of this period are exceedingly rare. Matthew's record wasn't written until the 2nd century. Scholars have wrestled with the date of Jesus' birth over millennia. One of the few things that is definite is that Jesus was not born on December 25th of any year. Now from Matthew we have that Jesus was born in the days of Herod the king. We think he was born in the 2 years prior to Herod's death, because shortly before Herod died, he ordered the slaughter of all the male children up to 2 years of age. Apparently Herod himself thought Jesus was up to 2 years old. And so the question boils down to, when did Herod die? And this we think we know. We know because the best historical reference of the time, Josephus, tells us that Herod died shortly after an eclipse of the moon. Eclipses happen according to laws we understand very well. Lunar eclipses happen when the moon passes through the shadow of the earth in space. We can calculate when they will happen in the future and when they did happen in the past. And because it was believed that Joseph and Mary went to Bethlehem to pay a tax in 8 BC, and because Herod's successors seemed to begin their reigns about 4 BC, the eclipse originally associated with Herod's death was the one before Passover in 4 BC. The levied tax applied only to Roman citizens, and the time between the eclipse and the Passover is too short for the reported travels of all involved. Furthermore, Herod did not die in 4 BC, but ruled jointly with Antipater until early in 1 BC. And there was a census that would have taken Joseph and Mary to Bethlehem. So the lunar eclipse associated with Herod's death was most likely the one on January 9th of 1 BC. And thus Jesus was born in 2 or 3 BC. And so we travel back to look at these years, back to December 24th, 4 BC. Christmas Eve, although it wasn't called that then. And we're going to see the sky from Herod's winter palace in Jericho, just a few miles from Jerusalem. Saw from his winter palace is almost exactly the same as the sky we see almost 2,000 years later in Los Angeles, although there are a few minor differences. Because Jericho is 2 degrees closer to the equator than Los Angeles, all the stars you're seeing are slightly shifted towards the north. Actually, this is a hardly noticeable difference. The biggest astronomical difference here is that the star that will one day be the North Star, for us, Polaris, which is at the end of the handle of the Little Dipper, is not the North Star in Herod's time. Now, the North Star we see is found right up here, the end of the handle of the Little Dipper down here. But because the Earth spins as it revolves around the sun, it wobbles like a top, and the North Pole thus points in different directions as time passes. In Herod's time, the North Pole pointed here, and there was no North Star. And you might expect that the stars, or at least the star patterns, have changed as well, but no. They stay the same for tens of thousands of years. Of all the differences, the only truly noticeable one is that Herod could see the stars. In Los Angeles, the city lights light up the sky and block them from view. And so when you look up to the constellations, you're looking at the same constellation seen for thousands of years by great men throughout history, including men like Moses, Archimedes, Jesus, Galileo, Nixon. You can look at these constellations too. All you have to do is look up. One of the easiest star patterns for you to find in the sky tonight is a star pattern known as Orion, the mighty hunter. Orion is marked by 4 stars in a rectangle and 3 stars in the middle of that rectangle in a line. He's just risen. Now, if I haven't given you enough hints to find this constellation yet, try this. Look for the brightest object you can see in the sky anywhere. That should be the green arrow.
Green arrow.
If you're having trouble finding it, it's right here. Don't get these confused. Pick this one, okay? Now, I can do a lot of things with this green arrow, like point out the constellation of Orion. Orion is right down here, marked by these 4 stars in a rectangle, and these stars in the middle of the line. So this constellation is supposed to be a hunter. And if you connect the dots right, you can even make it come out that way. If you imagine these two stars called Betelgeuse and Bellatrix to be his shoulders. Down here is kneecaps, Rigel and Said. 3 jewels in his jeweled belt called Mintaka, Al-Nilam, and Al-Nitab. There's a sword hanging from his belt here. A shield up in front. His arm is stretched overhead, ends in a club up in this group of stars in here. He has some dander from his beard. That's Orion, the mighty hunter. And you can use Orion to find something that he's in battle with. Eternal battle with Taurus the bull. Here's what you do to find Taurus. Point at the belt stars of Orion. Go ahead, it's dark in the theater. Nobody can see you. Okay, point at the belt stars of Orion. Draw a line to those belt stars to the right, up, until you come to a bright red star. That's Aldebaran, the bright, fiery red eye of Taurus the bull. That's the eye of the bull, there's his nose, there's his other eye. He's squinting. He also has 2 very large horns. One goes from this side of his face up to this star, called El-Net. The other one goes from this side of his face up to this star, the only star in the sky that bears a Babylonian name. And the Babylonian name for this star is Shurnar-Karbti-Shashutu. What? Yeah. Shurnar-Karbti-Shashutu. Pretty impressive name for such a dim star. Why? Very curious. So we looked it up. And we found that Shurnar-Karbti-Shashutu actually means a faint star at the tip of the left horn of the bull. It really means that. Anyway, over here we have some slides in the bull's back, sort of. What this is called is the Pleiades, or the 7 Sisters, a little star cluster. The Japanese call this group of stars Subaru. Just like the car. Matter of fact, next time you're stuck in a traffic jam behind a Subaru, look at the back of the car. Most of the models have a stylized rendition of this group of stars in the back. Okay, so we have Orion in eternal battle with Taurus the bull. He has his faithful hunting companion with him, Canis Major the big dog. Draw a line from this belt stars the other direction, you find the brightest star in the night sky. Sirius, meaning the bright one. It's the bright, shiny, wet nose of the big dog. It's real close to the horizon now, so it's hard to see some of the other things up there. Its ears go up to stars like this. His front legs, body stretches below the horizon, there's back legs and a tail there. So the big dog's up there. We also have a little dog right up here, marked by these 2 stars. Now, that's the only kind of dog you can draw with just 2 stars is a hot dog, but it's supposed to look like a real dog. Well, those stars aren't exactly the same brightness. If you move up a little bit farther, you'll find 2 that are very close in brightness. Castor and Pollux. Gemini, the twins. Those are the heads of the twins, the feet are down here, the body stretched in between somehow. And right near the twins, on December 24th of 4 BC, we have a planet, the planet Jupiter. Now, if you go outside and you look for Jupiter in the sky, on December 24th of 4 BC, if you can get back there, it won't be that big, but it will be that bright. We're showing it to you as it would be in the sky, just magnified so you can identify which planet it is. You also notice that up near Subaru up here, we have the planet Saturn. Again, you can't see the rings without a telescope, but you can see the planet. This is a dot in the sky looking like another star. Well, okay, so we've already found our way around a good part of the sky by using Orion. You can do the same thing. If you now move over to this half of the horizon through Taurus, you come on Aries, the ram, marked by the 2 horns, Hamal and Sheraton. Keep on going, you find a giant square of stars called Pegasus. And this is a flying horse, believe it or not. You can see that the constellations don't have to look like what we're calling them, just like the state of Washington doesn't look like George. Okay, so this one looks more like, to me, a baseball game with this being first, second, third, and home. Pitcher, catcher, and umpire with the manager over here. And if you look at it this way, you can use it to find the North Star. All you have to do is draw a line from third to home, take a big slide, keep on going, and you'll find the North Star. It is a straight line, by the way, in the real sky. To many of you, that look curved because our dome's curved. In the real sky, you can find the North Star that way, whenever the Big Dipper is not up. Okay. We also have Pisces right near the Pegasus here, marked by this line of stars and this line of stars. Here's the head of one of the fish. Down here, we find Venus, the evening star. And it's in the constellation of Aquarius. Now, for us this year, in 1986, Aquarius is also setting just after the sun sets. There's something in there that you can see tonight. A little fuzzy patch of light right here near the jug of Aquarius. fuzzy patch of light is called Halley's Comet. That, believe it or not, is what all the fuss is about. Okay, so anyway, the comet, if you want to find out about that, we have a couple shows about it. You're welcome to come in and find out about it. Anyway, this is the skies that would have been seen by our ancestors. And as you can see, don't try to learn all the constellations at once if you want to learn them. What you should do is pick out maybe one or two of the constellations that you like, that you find interesting from among all the ones that are visible. Just pick out a couple and try to find them for yourself tonight. Next week, learn a new one. The week after that, learn a new one. And before long, you'll know the entire sky. All this is just as Herod would have seen it just after sunset on December 24th of 4 BC. This is also what the Magi would have seen. Okay, so where is the Christmas star? Well, remember, Herod didn't see it. He inquired diligently of the Magi. He didn't see it because he looked at the sky differently than the Magi did. All the people of the Holy Land looked at the sky differently than the Magi. We know that the Jews, who made up the bulk of Herod's kingdom, were not particularly interested in astronomy, let alone astrology. They were only interested in God as he revealed himself in the sky. The Jews were actively discouraged by their religion from delving into matters that perhaps should remain a mystery. They were taught that astrology, not astronomy, was pagan, which it is. They classed it with magic, which is forbidden. And then we have Herod and the educated Jews. They would have learned the Roman and Greek teachings, and they would have known that the earth was either flat or round, depending on who you consult. Regardless, it was the center of the universe with everything going around the earth each day, while at the same time the sun, moon, and planets slowly drifted from constellation to constellation. They believed there was a clock-like order to the heavens, and with further study, that clock-like order could be figured out. And the beliefs of the Magi were very different. They came from an entirely different culture. They were Zoroastrian priests from the area around Babylon. They believed in a form of astrology which has so unfortunately survived to this day. They believed in the magic of the stars. The words magic and magi both come from the same root. And they believed that the many gods under Ahura Mazda, similar in many ways to modern-day saints, affected the motions of the planets in the sky. These gods also affected our lives down here on the earth. The Magi figured that if they knew where the gods pushed the planets around, well, they could figure out what the gods were up to. And then they could figure out what the gods would do to us, to human pawns down here on the earth. In other words, they tried to read the minds of the gods by reading the planets. Today, most of us know better than this. Gravity rules the planets, not gods. Now, Jews did not believe in astrology, and Herod probably didn't believe in astrology either. But both groups still respected the Magi as educated men, whereas most men were not. In addition, Herod could not take the chance of losing power in a religious land. And now we're prepared to look at the sky seen by the Magi. We look to the stars. And to the Magi, everything in the sky are stars. The moon, planets, comets, stars, and falling stars. Oh, could the Christmas star have been a falling star? Well, probably not. They're too common. About 7 of them that you can see on any dark night. Technically, they're called meteors. Meteors are tiny bits of material falling into the Earth's atmosphere from space at a very high rate of speed. They have the consistency and the size of a piece of popcorn or a grain of sand. When they hit the upper atmosphere of the Earth, about 100 miles up, they burn up from friction, heat up to 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and burn up in a flash of light. Now, these are too common. Obviously, the Magi couldn't follow every falling star to the Savior. Well, what about a huge falling star? Well, that's rare. It's something we really never see. There goes one now.
spectacular, but probably not the Christmas star. People who watch the sky, a dark sky like you're seeing now, would see about 2 to 3 of these things every year. So again, they're too common. And anyway, they disappear too fast to follow. This tail's almost already gone. Well, what about something that looks like a fireball? In a picture anyway, a comet. A comet does not streak through the sky. What comets do, they slowly drift from constellation to constellation. A comet is a giant ball of ice and rock that orbits the sun. And to see how a comet works, let's look down at our solar system from above. And as we do this, as we get above our solar system, and we look down on it, we can see that the sun is in the center. And going around it are the 9 planets. We have Mercury, Venus, the Earth and Moon doing a square dance once a moon. Here's Mars, Jupiter, Saturn's down here, looking down on the rings. And then the last 3 planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, well, they can't be seen without telescopes, so the Magi never would have seen any of those. Anyway, all these planets follow some very simple laws. We have the sun in the center, first of all, and the planets are going around it in nearly circular orbits. Not perfectly circular, they're going around in something called ellipses, which are elongated circles. And you can see that if you look to Mercury, which has a close point to the sun and a far point from the sun. The closer the planet is, the faster it's going around. And the solar system finally is flat. It's flat like a record is flat. If you look at a record from the edge on, it looks like it's very thin, like a line. It's the same with our solar system if we look at it from the edge on. Now, how do comets fit into this? Well, they have long elliptical orbits, sort of like fat cigars going around the sun like this. Far away from the sun, then moving on down. When they get close to the sun, the comets, which are giant balls of ice and rock, evaporates a little bit. And that's when it's heated by the sun. The dust and gas that's evaporated is then pushed away by the solar wind, forming the tail, which is always pointing away from the sun. And so comets are rare. They come unexpectedly. They stay in the sky long enough to follow them. Could a comet have been the Christmas star? Well, probably not. And there are several good reasons for believing not. First, a person who watches the sky religiously will see several good comets in a lifetime. You can also consult the ancient records of the time. The Roman records are useless to us. But the Chinese, well, they kept complete and very accurate records of what was seen in the sky. Now, even if they didn't know what they were seeing, we do have records of those events. And we find Halley's Comet in 12 BC. That's bright, and it's a bit too early. There's a dim comet seen in 5 BC. Again, that's dim, and it's far too early. And a tailless comet was seen in 4 BC. Very dim, and still too early. There were none in 3 or 2 BC. Okay, so that's 2 strikes against it already. Third strike. Herod didn't see anything. And a bright comet is visible to anyone. And worst of all, the word comet comes from the Greek words cometus astor, meaning hairy star. These hairy stars were omens of evil. They were associated with floods, plagues, famines, and the death of kings. It's hardly likely that the Magi would have followed an evil-omened hairy star to the Savior. So the Christmas star was not a falling star. It was not a fireball. It was not a hairy star. Could it have been a real star? Well, stars rarely do anything spectacular. The same stars shine for billions of years. The patterns change so slowly you wouldn't notice any change in tens of thousands of years. However, when a star runs out of fuel, if it's big enough, a chain of events causes the star to explode violently in what we call a supernova explosion.